Okay, hi Sophia. Thank you for doing this interview with me. Can you introduce yourself and tell me a bit about what you do today?
Sorry, my name is Sophia Mangera. I came to England in '64 and I've grew up here. And what am I doing now? I am unemployed at the moment. I was made redundant from London Borough of Lewisham. I was a health and safety person.
I know you grew up in South Africa with your sister, so can you tell me a bit about what it was like growing up in a country that was going through something such as apartheid back then?
A view from it as an adult, and again, my experiences were quite horrific then. The brutality of apartheid, just judging you on your colour of your skin and what service you can get.
And so, did you find that things were better when you came over and you moved here to England? What was your experience here?
Well, in '64 I was very young, so but I think because I hadn't experienced South Africa like my sisters who were slightly older and they went to school there and they were quite conscious about the apartheid and the racism. I found my primary school was very accommodating, and at the time in '64, I think the Beatles were quite fashionable at the time, and the whole thing about India and the gurus, and there was a kind of very positive attitude about the Middle East and Eastern culture. So I was quite. The teachers were really receptive, and really. Well, I used to kind of go into the class talking about things, but it's changed. It was there, but it changed. We were in Battersea at the time, and it was a very working class community. Uh, so we supported each other, but there was also some divisions there. Our neighbour grew up to become a National Front person, which was a shock to my sister because we played with them, and and then suddenly he became a policeman, and so I think that ties in a lot to with Battle of Lewisham. When we moved from Clapham, from Battersea to Clapham, we had some racist incidents in our place. We had tar thrown on our path, in our driveway, going to our house, firecrackers thrown through our letterbox, and our car was burnt, set on fire. So that was towards the 60s, 69, 67, 69.
Can you tell me a bit about the Battle of Lewisham? How old were you when you attended?
I was 17, but before that I was very active. I went to college. I was an NUS Internal Affairs Secretary, so I organised a lot of events on anti-racism. I was a anti-apartheid chair of the group, and we were very active in our college against racism. Um, I had friends in Lewisham, in Breakspears Road. It was a whole South African house full of all activists from all. They used to come from all over Britain or from South Africa. The students would come along, so we'd all be involved in anti-apartheid and movement. We heard about the demonstrations. I mean, before that, the tension has been growing in the community because the police were stopping and searching black people, black young youths in particular, victimising them. There was racist attacks because we had the Ugandan Asians coming over, and there's a negative attitude towards them. So there was lots of kind of racism was being fueled, um, and and so we could see that the community were unhappy at the tensions, and then when the National Front decided to deliberately cause some tensions, and we decided we want to stop them. We went to about 20 of us went, and maybe more actually. We had people come from Wales, from Birmingham, from from all access of different universities, as well as local people, and we all went to the peaceful demo, which was nice because it was good to see a mixture of people. But we were really annoyed and angry at the fact that we weren't allowed to march to the way we wanted to, and we learned from Cable Street that we shouldn't let the fascists take over the streets and the community stand up. We wanted to stand up, so we went through the back streets with a lot of people actually, to down to Clifton Rise and Bracknell Street, and were determined to stop them. The slogan was. Uh, um, Black and white united fight, smash the National Front, and no platform to fascists and racists, because that was a time when the Labour Party, the Home Office, and police were talking about freedom of speech, but the National Front were actually trying to deny freedom of speech of half the communities, in Lewisham, the black communities. So we were against it. What did I feel like as a youngster? Um, I think we felt frightened initially we're not sure what the police did, because we knew the police can be heavy-handed, so we were frightened. But there was also this kind of solidarity and this comradeship, because there were so many people there, and it made us feel really more powerful, that we could be there as a group. And when all the people from the houses were joining in and stuff, we think, well, we're going to make a stand. We saw the National Front being brought out. Before that, the police kind of tried to break us, because we were trying to stop them. They started running. They had the horses out, and I was like 6.5 stone, really light, tiny, and the horses were like 8 foot, 9 foot, really huge, and really nearly trampled us. They were just running, they were just riding right into the crowds. They didn't care, and hitting people as they go along Bushmouth Way. I was so lucky to be rescued by some of the demonstrators. We didn't know each other, but they rescued each other. And then some of the houses on the street, they've got these basements and flats, so we could escape from the horses then. But it was horrible, very, very bad. But I think the tension, the fear, the frustration, but the anger was all part of seeing. When we saw them, that was the worst part, because there was like 5, 10 deep police on either side surrounding these handful, I don't know how many, 500 odd National Front people, and they were like protecting them, and we thought, how could they do that when they were.
So it was really like it was in the pictures I've seen in the exhibition, like a standoff. Wow.
What was worse for me was I came across these 2 policemen who I used to play sports with, which was, I played for England under 21, this sport called korfball, which is a mixed team sport. But I didn't know that they were police officers. And when we confronted each other at the demo, it was like a shock, because I played with these people and then find out they're on the opposite side. And then when I met them afterwards and tried to discuss it, we couldn't communicate. So I had to actually decide what to do then, and I gave up my sports for politics, because I couldn't be with these people.
How did that feel, having an experience years before your neighbours find out that they're National Front, and then later finding out that the police officers that you knew are National Front members as well? Like, how did that make you feel?
Well, it made me feel that, I think with the policemen was worse, because you don't expect them, then they shouldn't be National Front, they should be apolitical technically, and they should not have, but they used to have these badges on them, little gollywogs, sorry about the language, but they used to have these things to show that they were basically part of the National Front. Yeah, they used to carry them, and I felt, how do you feel? I felt, I suppose it's part of, there are people who can have those views, and I think at the time I walked away, and I think, looking back at it now, maybe I should have had a conversation and tried to talk to them about why they do it, and try to dispel some of the lies and the myths that the National Front were perpetuating. Not only National Front, we've got the BNP and EDL, and now we have Farage, and even some of the politicians like, Margaret Thatcher and May, and even some Labour MPs, not MPs, but some of them come out with racist stuff too, which I stand against.
You mentioned a bit before about young black youth in particular being searched a lot. Do you think there's a lot of similarities between then and today, with young black youth being stopped, or ethnic minorities in particular?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't think it was black youth then, black West Indian or Afro-Caribbean, because they also, as part of the whole Battle of Lewisham and also the growth of racism, was divide and rule. They wanted to divide the black communities. And if you see, Battle of Lewisham, the slogan was black and white unite. We didn't differentiate between blacks, Asians, we didn't subdivide people, because united you're stronger than you're divided, and that's what we were trying to do. And I think what's happened since then, it's been fragmented. And that's the sad part, where they want to divide us more. But seeing our response to the Iraq War, and also the racist attacks that have been happening recently on black people, deaths in custody and Black Lives Matter, I think we are getting back to that. What else did you ask about?
Did you?
Similarities, what did you say?
Do you think?
Go on, what did you say?
Present. Do you think there's a?
Oh, the parallel. Yes, there is a similarity, because we have stop and search, which was police were using then in the 70s, but we have now prevent, and it's moved to a lot of this. It's moved to the Asian Muslim kind of communities, Islamophobia and attacking the Muslim youth, and so I think you get that across the country, that the harassment of young males in particular.
So you don't think they've improved?
I think some awareness has improved, and I think people can report it, and because of social media and stuff, we can actually now expose it much more more than we could before, which I think is a good thing. Um, and there was loads of organisations that sprung up since in the 70s. They were also funded by the local authorities, which is anti-racist organisations, and GLC, and all those have been decimated. And so it fragmented the community's response, because we don't have the money to fight and campaign. And so, that's changed, and that's got worse over the last 30 years with the Tory people cuts by the successful governments. But we are there. The black youth are rising in their own way. They're using different forms of music. They're using spoken word. Word of mouth. So people are organising, I think, differently.
Do you think young people are more active today than they were back now, or do you think young people today need to do more?
I have 3 daughters. um, they're active in different ways, but I would love them to get more involved, because it's a young generation who are going to change the future, and we can help. But a lot of people are dying out, and most of the impact are on the young people in terms of jobs, housing, education, all the race. You talk about institutional racism, you get all that, and some people are involved, but not enough. And if you saw the Battle of Lewisham's commemorations, it were brilliant, but the representation could have been better. And maybe that's because it's been hidden for so long. For 40 years we haven't talked about it properly or commemorated it. And I think what Goldsmith's done is brilliant. More institutions should be doing that. Not only getting the university involved, but the community, but also young people, like you, who haven't seen what has happened or don't know about it, to be educated. Because, if you know your history, then you can change the part of the future.
So, moving on to that topic of education, do you think stuff like this should be taught in schools? Because, we learn all about civil rights and slavery and everything, and that's interesting. But I feel like learning your local history and British black history would be really interesting to be put into the curriculum at school as well.
Totally. I've always been committed to having black history in schools, not just on Black History Month, but throughout the curricula, throughout the year. I worked quite a lot. Actually, I've got a lot of information, and I've done loads of activities in my local primary school with my children on black history, but talking from a local perspective, what's happening. And I think it should be compulsory, because if you see with partition, as was a recent thing at the moment, besides black history, Battle of Lewisham, the lack of knowledge. I spoke to local youngsters in the shops and stuff. Do you know about Battle of Lewisham? They have no clue. And this is not just a black history, it's a black and white history of our anti-racist struggle. And we need to keep that in mind and actually commemorate it, celebrate it, and build on it.
One more question. What do you think the Battle of Lewisham, has it had any impact on your life, your whole life so far?
I've taken it into my work, into the workplace, and into my schools, my kids. So I think
you carry it everywhere you go.
Because racism is not just for black people; it's for everybody. It's anti-racism will benefit the whole society, not just black or white people. But also, being South African, I know what it's like to live under a system where you use the colour of your skin to divide and rule and oppress. And it's very important that we don't let the National Front or the EDL or whoever, even the government, to actually fuel racism. And over the years, I think it's got worse. The media has become more overtly racist. And before, some of the words like I don't want to use the word, but nigger and stuff like that were taboo subject. People have started using them again as abuse. And since Brexit, that's also increased the amount of racist attacks. And just walking the streets, my husband is Ethiopian. He was saying he never experienced it. Suddenly racism come out. People shout out windows. So
you think the media fuels a lot of these hatred?
The media feels, and the people who fund the media, the people that controls the media, there's a small group of people who are very rich and powerful. Some of them supported the Nazis in the 30s, so it's very much part of their system. Racism.
Thank you.
question? If I answered the question yet? So yeah, I mean, I'm going to be anti-racist all my life, aren't I? Oh, well, I forgot to tell you this. I'm the chair of Lewisham Bain. I'm the chair of Lewisham Black and Ethnic Minority uh, Forum. So I'm trying to, because if you see the austerity, it affects black and ethnic minorities disproportionately. So I've been working with them to get black people engaged. You know, we're talking about engagement of black people. Uh, they're not engaged enough in politics, so I'm trying to get black micro groups and making sure that we are represented and have a voice, not just a verbal voice, but also voting and having, they can make proper changes. So that's what I'm trying to do within the Labour Party. But that shows that, wherever you go, you can actually make changes. And I think that's what you've got to think about as young people, that you have the power and you need to organise. And that's what you can do. Word of mouth, using all the ways you can to get people mobilised to change things. And I'm really glad you're doing this.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this interview with us.
I've got one more.
One more question?
Huh?
Huh?
No, you're very articulate.
Oh, no.
What's the reason for the lack of engagement in young people?
Well, I'm thinking for my kids. My kids are engaged, some of them. I don't know. I think you have the education system. It depends. As I said, the education system is a big gap in knowledge and recognising the history of black struggles in the country. We're faced every day with racism in our jobs, in our streets, in our housing, wherever you go. We're trying to fight, trying to make a living, trying to just survive, and then you can see how, racism is seen as their problem, not our problem. It's their problem because they're the ones who are being racist, not our problem. But I don't know what it is. Young people, why are they not engaged? Some more than others. There are certain class of people that are engaged more. Certain. Are you engaged in politics?
Not really.
See, but I think it depends what you define as politics and engagement. Because as I said to you earlier, you could be engaged in music, and that's very political. But I was in the carnival yesterday, and things that people were saying on the sound systems were very radical. You're talking about the actual conditions and what you're facing. So it doesn't have to be where you join a political party, but you can join a particular campaign. You can join.
In that sense, then, yeah.
Yeah. So you are political, aren't you? Yeah. So that's it. People don't realise that. Stop trying to think. My kids, are they involved? They're involved in single issues. Some of them they're involved in communities with poetry and spoken word. So some people do get engaged.
Thank you for doing this interview with us. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad. I hope you.